very much for that speech. And it's particularly brilliant to see first years auditioning to speak in our chamber and speak so well. To the first opposition speaker, we have Lord Griffiths of Burry Port. Lord Griffiths has spent over 20 years on the Lords' benches, beforehand served as a broadcaster, a writer, was in Haiti for 10 years, an academic and a leading figure in the Methodist Church. Lord Griffiths of Burry Port, you have the ears of the House.
Mr. President and friends, I hope we may consider ourselves to be friends. Following a passionate speech like that is not easy for an old fogey like me, who's lived a long life, worked through quite a lot of problems, tried to make sense of what he can, and has had time to reflect on it. Gosh, if the speech that Ismail has made suggests that he stands outside the Labour Party, I shall be recruiting him as soon as this debate ends. Because if the Labour Party needs anything, it needs that passion, it needs that commitment, and it needs that energy. So thank you so much for making that speech. Of course, you won't expect me to agree with all of it. But politics is the art of the possible. That's been the truism that has made most sense to me over the years. Oh, I know what I'd like a political party to do, to achieve, changes it might make. I could write them out for you. But I also know that the constraints of actually wielding power, when you not only have your manifesto commitments to fulfill, but also the stuff that life throws at you, nationally and internationally, and that makes things very often much more complicated. From my own South Wales, this very day, 3,000 workers will be made redundant at the Port Talbot Steelworks. I don't know what will happen to Port Talbot once that happens. It's almost the last surviving township in Britain, really, that's a kind of one-industry town. There were lots more before Mrs. Thatcher took her scythe to it. Is somebody asking? Yes, please.
The reason the steel mill closed was because in 2018, following the US and the EU's 25% tariff on steel, the UK followed and has put safeguard measures for reasons of free trade versus
Yeah. Well, thank you for that intervention, and I'm not disputing your figures or even the inevitability of the results. I'm talking about the people of Port Talbot, who from the end of this month will have no work. That's what I'm talking about. There may be reasons. There always are reasons. That's what I'm saying. Politics is about dealing with stuff that the world throws at you. And this is something that's being thrown at the town that has produced Anthony Hopkins and Richard Burton and Michael Sheen. For goodness sake, it's a town of creativity. It's a wonderful place. Aberavon, Margam, Port Talbot. And they will hear what you said on a bit of paper. They may see the same conclusions as you. But they will still say, where are we now going to find our work? That's what I'm interested in. And so I just wanted to congratulate a working class young man. Because the one thing that I can tell this audience is that I too am from the working class. I may be Lord Griffiths now, but my life began inauspiciously in South Wales when my parents divorced. My mother was given 1 week to quit what was called her husband's house with 2 small children, and I was raised in one room in a lean-to in a brickyard. We scavenged on the tips. We begged at the crossroads. We gathered winter fuel, my brother and I, from a very early age. And I was politicized from way back then. I wanted to fight a world where people didn't have to do that anymore, where it was considered normal and natural to have somewhere decent to live in, enough money to get by on, I shall never forget the tin pot little official coming to interview my mother to see if she was justified in not going to work. She'd suffered an industrial accident in the tin plate factory where she carried huge sheets of steel from one part of an annealing process to another, and it broke her body. She never ever regained her full strength again. And this tin pot man in a suit and with a briefcase. Some of you may turn out to be one of those petty officials. Never humiliate the people you find in those positions. Always treat them as decent human beings. My mother was a fantastic woman. Left school at 14. Her linguistic skills, her artistic skills, her capacity to explain herself and to analyze an argument were patent. But she lived on a knife edge all the life until she died. My brother and I somehow survived. I passed the 11 plus, my brother didn't. My brother went to work in factories, became a shop steward, went through the GMB, the General Municipal and Boiler Workers Union, until he became an area organizer. Was ultimately offered a place at Oxford, at Ruskin College. He's a clever boy, but he failed the 11 plus. And I wanted to be with a party that saw to it that everybody had an equal chance. And I'm glad that it was the Labour administration who brought comprehensive education into being. And I know its faults and its limitations. I've been a school governor for over 40 years. I know about it, but it's still the model that we must find a way of making work. So the clever and the not so clever, the well-connected and the not so well-connected, that they have an equal opportunity. I had mine by passing the 11 plus when I didn't know I'd sat it. There was no culture in my background. I belonged to a gang. I was out with the lads beating up the people of the suburbs or the furnace fields or whatever it was. And so I just bring to this debate the sense of how my political angle of view was formed. I did not want a world where people had to suffer like my mother suffered. I did not want a world where people didn't have a roof over their heads. I did not want a world where people couldn't feed their children. And I've worked my entire life in order to address those objectives. My entire life. When I'm in this place for the very first time, I'm scared to bits, if you want to know. When I left the grammar school, my headmaster said to me that I was clever enough to go to Oxford and Cambridge, but he didn't think I would be able to cope socially. And so I didn't come. I went to Cardiff. I did a degree in medieval English. I went to teach it in the University of Wales. I was clever, but I didn't come here because I wasn't able to cope socially. Now, I know Oxford and Cambridge isn't the Oxford and Cambridge of my day. I'm delighted about that, but there's tons more to do. Do you know that 83% of Keir Starmer's cabinet were educated in comprehensive state schools? 60% of Rishi Sunak's cabinet educated in fee-paying schools. That says it all for me. I want a world in which everybody has an equal opportunity. And here I am. I was 3 years in Cambridge, ultimately, to do my theology degree at Fitzwilliam. Never set a foot in here, because I was afraid to, in case I couldn't cope socially. Never came. But my classmate did, Michael Howard, and he became the president of the union. He was clever enough, and his family had money. He said, prison works. When I became the president of the Methodist Conference, there were 43,000 people in our prisons. I visited 15 prisons during my year of office. Prison didn't work. It definitely didn't work. By the time the 1990s had finished, there were 75,000 people in prisons, and now it's even more than that. I want a just world where creative ways of dealing with crime, the production of a society that doesn't automatically reduce people. 1 minute remaining. Is that, am I allowed to ignore that, like he said? Right. Well. I could go on. I just want to say that after that, I had 10 years. After 10 years in higher education, a teacher, a research student, an affiliated student here at Cambridge, and ultimately a PhD. I went to Haiti, the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. And I can tell you that whatever battles we have to face here, there are battles on the global scale that you can't even imagine by sitting here. I spent 10 years, I speak their languages, I learned how to be a whole person again because peasant people in Haiti taught me their language, their culture, they welcomed me as a friend. Now, I want a world where that happens. The only political party I can see that I must put my trust in for all its faults, that will help us take the tentative steps in that direction, is the Labour Party. And I do not believe that it has betrayed the working class. It has given me my chances through the welfare state, through Harold Wilson's government, through New Labour. I could talk about all of those. No, I'm not answering because I'm out of time. I'm already trespassing. But I hope I've made my point. Lovely to see you. Thank you for putting up with my feelings of intimidation, and I hope you'll see sense as the arguments are rolled out.